Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
Oh, this is the way we're going to do recare. We're going to start doing it this way now. And you're following along. And then all of a sudden you have a meeting 8 months later, 9 months later, and somebody brings up something about recare. And you say, well, aren't we doing it this way? They go, well, no, we did that for a while, but now we do it this way. I go, well, wait a minute, I'm the boss. Why are we doing it that way? And it usually was because someone left and we brought in someone else who had a different way of doing it. And that is not leadership. That is not being an effective leader. What's being an effective leader is whatever system that you have in your practice, come up with a solid system. Solid system.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bruce B. Baird, and you're listening to the Productive Dentist Podcast. In this podcast, I will give you everything that I've learned over the last 40 years in dentistry, working with thousands of dentists. I'll tell you, it's not that my way is the only way. It's just one that has worked extremely well for me, and I'd love to share that with you so you too can enjoy the choices and lifestyle that productivity allows. More time for things you love, increased pay, better team relationships, and lowered stress. Let's get into it with this week's episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.
Hello, this is Dr. Bruce Baird. Today we're going to talk about leadership and what I like to call trust but verify. Over the years, and I've told you guys I was the worst boss on the planet because everything was my way or the highway. Well, I had to learn to speak that new language, and that new language involved me learning just different communication skills. And leadership itself is not about doing it yourself, but it really is about being an example for your team. And I think at some point, and we've always had a large team, and I can guarantee you the first 15 to 18 years of my practice, people hated being there. And I've heard that from more than one person who used to work for me and more than one person who still works for me. So what changed? What things did I start to do differently? Well, the biggest thing is I started taking responsibility for my own attitude when I walked in the door. When I walked in, I wanted to have fun being a dentist, and it was difficult. I wanted to have a model practice. I wanted that practice to be something that I could be proud of and I could share with other dentists. And it's something that, somebody told me years ago, if you want to teach, which I love teaching, do something and make it the best you can absolutely be, then share that with other people. Well, the first 15 years, I wasn't doing a very good job. But I also was coming in with an attitude, with a chip on my shoulder that most of the team, I had that experience that they weren't having fun either. So it was kind of a downward spiral over the years. And what I began to do is I began to walk into the office after the smiley face, frowny face incident. If you guys have listened to previous podcasts, is that, that was me. I came in with a smiley face or I came in with a frowny face every day. I truly tried to come in with an attitude that this is going to be a great day. And it's easier said than done. I was going through a lot of personal issues, but still, I look at this as a one-act play. When I walk in, I'm going to be generally in a good mood, and I'm going to enjoy my patients. And sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. And that's what I did. But what I found was all these people that I had been working with for years, I didn't know anything about them. I didn't, I knew they had a couple kids or I knew this and that, But if you'd asked me what their names were, I didn't even know what some of the employees' names were. So how am I supposed to be a leader when I'm really not even a part of the conversation when I'm talking to my team? So I began to look at it and say, okay, who is, start asking questions, just simply asking questions of my team. How are the kids doing? What's, what are they doing? And what are they doing at school? What are they studying? The same type things that I would do with patients to build relationships, I wanted to start doing that and building relationships with my employees, with my, what I call now my family, because they really are my family. And what I found was when I started showing an interest in them, they started showing a much bigger interest in our business and our practice. Truthfully, leadership for me goes back to when I got out of dental school. I joined the military. I was in the service. And, I was the only captain in a 28-chair clinic. And if you know the military, most of the lieutenant colonels and majors, they don't do a lot of work. They just go to meetings. In particular, they do that in a large place like Fort Sam Houston, which is kind of an administrative place where all the dentists would love to be stationed. I had spent a year in Korea and then came back and, was now in a 28-chair clinic. And the truth is, I didn't know really what I was doing. I had 8 chairs or 8 treatment rooms that I could use. And as a member of the team, it was real easy for me to be a part of it, to have fun with the expanded duty assistants that I had. But the thing that made the biggest difference for me was the full colonel who had just come in and taken over as the commander of that clinic. And he was one of the most amazing guys. He asked questions and he got to know who I was. Now, I have to say, I learned all these things, then I went into private practice and didn't do any of them. But I'm going back to the origin so that you'll have some understanding of what I'm talking about. But he literally said, all right, doc, let's do this. Let's see who sees the most patients today, the most emergency patients today. And I would go, all right, let's do it. And so he would see 35 or 40 patients. I'd see 35 or 40, but whoever won, the other one bought a beer for him. That went on I was there at Fort Sam Houston for 3 years. And I will tell you that it got better and better and better because I would beat him and he would say, all right, let's take off early. Let's go play golf. I mean, I was supposed to get off at 4:30. We'd leave 2:30, 3 o'clock because we got our work done and we'd go play golf together. In other words, he took a personal interest in me. Well, that's what we went from the last rated dental clinic of that size, 28 chair, the last ranked in the U.S. Army, to the first ranked in the U.S. Army in 1 quarter. In 3 months, we began doing more procedures than had ever been done in that clinic. So why did I do it? Because my boss was a leader. He was showing me how to do it. He wasn't just sitting in his office, coming up with stuff for me to do. He was in there doing it with me. And the respect that I had for him, I would do whatever it took. Now, I go open private practice and it didn't work out quite that well. I had employees that didn't want to be there. And micromanaging, my anal retentive, background of being a dentist and being an engineer, everything had to be perfect. But what I found was getting to know my team and getting to know them personally, getting to know their families. Many of you do that, and you know how that works, but it wasn't what I was doing. And then learning these training opportunities and giving new responsibilities to my dental assistants for doing their own schedule and being responsible for that schedule. All of those things, and filling out trackers so I knew exactly how we were doing each month. Truth is, trust but verify. That's I would give responsibility to somebody and then I would expect it to be done. Now, in the past, if it wasn't done, I would yell and rant and rave, but I never asked them about it. For instance, I'm going to give you an example, filling out a tracker. For instance, we do trackers. We've been doing trackers for 30 years because I want to know how are we doing? What's our production per hour? What's what we call raving fan index? All these different things, but I wanted them to fill it out. And if you asked me at any given point in time, what's my production per hour, I could pretty much tell you what my production per hour is. This month I'm doing, whatever, $622 an hour. Whatever it was, I knew because my trackers were being filled out. Now, I had an associate that came in and he had his team doing his trackers, but the difference was he never checked them. I would ask him, what's your production per hour? Oh, I don't know. It's pretty good. I go, okay. So what ends up happening is I would tell him, I said, well, it's kind of interesting that you don't know what your production per hour is because your tracker hadn't been filled out in 6 weeks. So he wouldn't know, but his team was responsible for that. But the fact that he wasn't looking at it, he wasn't verifying that it was being done on a daily basis meant it wasn't getting done on a daily basis. How many times have you put something into your office as, oh, this is the way we're going to do recare. We're going to start doing it this way now. And you're following along. And then all of a sudden you have a meeting 8 months later, 9 months later, and somebody brings up something about recare. And you say, well, aren't we doing it this way? They go, well, no, we did that for a while, but now we do it this way. I go, well, wait a minute, I'm the boss. Why are we doing it that way? And it usually was because someone left and we brought in someone else who had a different way of doing it. And that is not leadership. That is not being an effective leader. What's being an effective leader is whatever system that you have in your practice, come up with a solid system, and then expect it to be dealt with that way, but hold people accountable for it. It's so easy now with cell phones because you can put little reminders on your calendar that says, I want to ask Kelly, our office manager now, I want to ask her about X, Y, and Z. Now, these are things that I expect her to do, but I'm just going to ask her questions about it. So she knows that that's important to me. And if it's important to me, she'll do it. And, I don't have to do it. And at some point in time, it becomes physiologic. It becomes something that's just part of their DNA. I don't have to look at my trackers with Summer and with Gay. It's physiologic. They do it because they know I look at it. And so the more you're able to trust and verify, the less you have to trust and verify, if that makes any sense. But I still do it because I know that it's human nature to do things. Sometimes it's human nature to do it an easier way. And if nobody's looking, why not do it that way? It's all about that. It's all about doing it in the most effective way. For instance, recare, or how you work with hygiene, how you check hygiene patients, how the patients are greeted at the front desk. You go down the list, and there's, dentistry is not that complicated. It's not like we have 400 different systems. We have a system for collections. We have a system for productivity. We have a system for greeting patients. We have a system for how we do our exams. We have a certain number of systems, but it's not that complicated, especially if you come up with what you believe is going to be best for your business and best for your practice, and which for me, I've learned from everybody across the board in dentistry. And I'm continually changing. I'm continually finding new ways of doing things. But when we do something new, we verify that it's being done, and we verify that it's working. So as a leader, you might say, gosh, guys, I really thought this would work well, but I've made a decision that it's really not doing what I thought it would do. They get a feeling like, you know what? Doc really does care about us. He's looking and evaluating the systems, and we become together part of a solution that's going to make a major difference in our business. And when they're doing it and I'm verifying, oh my gosh, it's so much more fun doing dentistry when you have a team that is 100% behind what you're doing. It may be, calling and confirming patients, having my team call and confirm, my assistants individually. If I don't ask them, how are you making those calls? How does that go? Are you finding that you're running behind during the day? They'll say, no, I'm doing fine. Now, when we first implemented that, oh my gosh, the front office, the back, the people in the back were like, well, what are they going to do up front? The people up front, I say, well, what are they doing? That's what my job is. No, I know what's the best system that's going to have the least number of patients not show up. Because when Gay's in charge of her schedule and she's the one calling to confirm her patient, well, she knows that patient. And the chances of them defaulting to Gay are very different than the chances of her defaulting to Jan up at the front desk. That, when they call and talk to Jan, oh yeah, I'm not going to be there, I can't make that appointment. They call to talk to Gay, that's a whole different animal. So these are little things that make a massive difference in productivity. But to me, it makes a massive difference in just the feeling of the office and how you go to work. Things are being done at a high level because you're holding them accountable. There may be only 15 things that you have on your calendar that you want to ask about, but make sure you do it every month. Because when you do it, you're going to find that the team understands that this is a big deal. This is something that makes the office run. They get to do so much more than most dental practices around the country. And I'm not talking about doing things that they're not allowed to do with the Dental Practice Act. I'm talking about they're taking responsibility. They're making sure that that patient walks in the front office when they come through the door, that they're getting greeted a certain way, because I ask questions about those things. So these are all things that you can do in your practice. Leadership, there's so many great leadership quotes. I love talking about leadership. It's something that for me, I was so bad at it. It was horrible. Junior Seau, unfortunately had some brain injuries from football days, but he said leadership can't be fabricated. If it is fabricated and rehearsed, you can't fool the guys in the locker room. So when you talk about leadership, it comes with performance. Leadership comes with consistency. That's Junior Seau. And you know what? I couldn't agree more. So we're going to talk a lot on the podcast about leadership and all the little teeny things that I do. And I'm learning new ways to be a better leader. There is no arrival. There is no day where you say, oh, I'm a great leader. You constantly have to earn the respect of your team. And if you're not doing that, you're just expecting them to come to work because that's what you hired them for, which is what I did for years. I hired you to do this work. Why should I pat you on the back? It's not the way to become a great leader. So I leave you with those comments and look forward to the next podcast.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe. Pass it along to a friend. Give us a like on iTunes and Spotify, or drop me an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. Don't forget to check out other podcasts from the Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentistpodcast.com. Join me again next week for another episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.